Tragedy 2. Tragedy of Indonesian cruelty in Meula, West Aceh, January 7, 2005. As the tsunami disaster, a soul-stirring and heartbreaking opening. On the cold morning of January 7, 2005, Meula was still grieving. The sea breeze carries the salty smell and the smell of death, sweeping away the ruins of houses and bodies that have not yet been buried. The cries of children who have lost their parents are mixed with the prayers of parents who have lost their children. In the middle of the wounds that are still wet, as the people of West Aceh try to rise from the destruction of the tsunami, there comes another force that is much more brutal than the waves. Men in uniforms who carry weapons and orders without a heart can be imagined in the midst of the sadness of the disaster. Meula's sky that morning was not only covered in grey clouds, but also the smoke of burning houses and cries for help drowned in the sound of gunfire. They came under the pretext of order and relocation, but what happened was massacre and rape. Every bullet that is fired, every scream that is suppressed, is a witness that this crime is not an accident, but the will of power over the helpless people. January 7, 2005. On January 7, 2005, just 2 weeks after that tsunami that devastated Aceh, the land of Meula, which was still covered in mud and tears, was again shaken by a humanitarian tragedy carried out by uniformed officers. While the people of West Aceh were grieving, losing their families, homes, and everything they had, a new wave of suffering came, this time not from the sea, but from the hands of the people who were supposed to protect them. According to reports from AJAR 2005, Tempo 2005, and Human Rights Watch 2006, this bloody incident occurred in several villages around Meula, including Suweng, Gampa, and Ujongboro. TNI and Brumab officers carried out an operation to force the relocation of refugees to military camps. When residents refused to move for fear of losing their remaining land and possessions, officers shot, beat, raped, and burned their homes. In this incident, 84 civilians were recorded as direct victims, consisting of 24 people killed and 60 people seriously injured, as well as 40 houses confiscated and 10 hectares of land seized by the security apparatus. Among the victims, at least 12 children were victims of violence and brutal shootings, and 15 women were raped, mostly at guard posts and military relocation camps. Names of child victims and perpetrators involved: Ismail Abdullah, 11 years old, shot when trying to protect his mother from criminals in Suweng village. Pelaku, Seda Boyu Otni, son of Bripka Arman Siregar Brumab. Fatima Zara, 10 years old, was shot in the head when officers fired their weapons at a crowd of residents who refused to move. Perpetrators: 2nd Lieutenant August Riodi, TNI, and 1st Brigadier Dedi Roman Brumab. M. Fadl, 9 years old, beaten with a rifle butt because he cried when he saw his father being beaten. Perpetrator: Sergeant Hendra Wijaya, TNI, Kutnabila, 13 years old, pulled from the tent and beaten for shouting for help. Found dead the next day. Perpetrators: Bripka Siji, Yulianto Brumab, and Seda Mulyono Chni. Risal, 8 years old, shot in the chest while trying to save his younger brother who fell into the mud. Perpetrator: 2nd Lieutenant Faryal Prasetyo Chni. Ayu Rama, 12 years old, disappeared after being taken by 2 officers from the Gampa evacuation post. Perpetrators: Briptarian Andika Brumab and Serchu Ilham Setioan Chni. Names of female victims of sexual violence and perpetrators involved: Nahayati, 28 years old, raped and murdered at her home in Gampa. The perpetrators were Lieutenant Colonel Bombong Santoso Tni and Bripka Fadli Ahmad Brumab. Kutasma, 32 years old, kidnapped from a refugee tent and gang raped at a military post before being murdered. Perpetrators: Sergeant Rio Gunawan Tni and Brigadier Rizki Putra Brumab. City Asaya, 24 years old, raped in front of her 5-year-old child, then murdered. Perpetrators: Bripka Andi Saputra Brumab and Sergeant Dedi Ferment Saya TNI. Holima, 35 years old, raped and tortured to death in a relocation camp. Perpetrator, 2nd Lieutenant DWI Herianto Tni. Zainab, 29 years old, found dead in a rice field with signs of sexual violence. Perpetrators, Bribta Arif Nugraha Brimub and Said Andri Suryono Tni. Although there were 12 children who were victims and 15 women who were raped, due to limited access and ability, the survivors could only obtain the names listed above. To all Assaini's fathers, mothers, and brothers and sisters, this is a display of the truth, not to add to the wounds, but to remind the world that justice is upheld. If the United Nations does not act and the Indonesian colonialists continue to oppress the land of Aceh, then based on the UN Charter Article 1 on the right to self-determination, the voice of the people is the highest court that demands justice. According to followers, do these perpetrators deserve to be called human? Prayer and appeal, O Allah, the most just God, do not let the blood of these innocent people dry up without justice. Forgive those who died, glorify the martyrs of Aceh at your side. Make our suffering a witness before you that this country has been betrayed by the hands of the invaders. Allah's word in Surah An-Nisa 75 reminds us, why don't you fight in the way of Allah and defend the weak, whether men, women, or children who pray? Our Lord, take us out of this land whose inhabitants are tyrannical, and give us a protector from your side. Sabda Rasulallah, indeed, the destruction of a nation begins when the strong are allowed to oppress the weak. That day, Meula was once again covered in blood. The smell of death mixed with that tsunami mud. Little children lay among the rubble, women screamed silently, and old men were beaten until they could no longer get up. The authorities who came with the promise of protection turned into executioners on the land they were supposed to protect. Until today, not a single perpetrator has been tried. The people of West Aceh are still fighting to defend their land from expropriation, and justice is still a distant dream. We will not stop praying and speaking out, because silence is a form of betrayal of the blood of the martyrs. O world, listen to the voice of Aceh. Don't let this crime be buried in silence. Spread, share, and voice, so that justice comes, so that the blood of martyrs is not spilled in vain. List of known perpetrators based on public reports and testimony. Colonel DWS Santoso Tni, the Banda Aceh Sector Commander in post-tsunami operations, was named in field reports as the person in charge of military operations in and around Meula. Kompol Bombong Heriodi Polri, head of the Brimub unit that leads security posts in Ujong Borough and Gampa, reportedly ordered the search and arrest of civilians. Lieutenant Colonel Bombong Santoso Tni, the field commander who was mentioned in various testimonies from Gampa residents as the direct superior in the forced relocation operation. Sirka Hendra Wijaya Tni, a member of the ground unit who was involved in beating and shooting children in Suweng village. Bripka Andi Saputra Brimub member involved in the rape and murder of women in Meula. 2nd Lieutenant DWI Herianto Tni, named by witnesses as the perpetrator of torture against female refugees in the relocation camp. Briptarian Andika Brimub, involved in the kidnapping of children and violence against civilians in Gampa. Said a Rio Gunawan Tni, field member mentioned in the AJAR volunteer report as a perpetrator of violence against civilians. Bripka Rizki Putra Brimuband by witnesses in the Ajar report as one of the perpetrators of the rape of refugee women. 2nd Lieutenant Fayar Prasetyo, TNI, reportedly led the team that shot civilians who refused relocation. All the names above come from testimonial documents and public reports cited in the references section, as well as field witness accounts compiled by human rights organizations. None of them have ever been prosecuted. References: Tempo, Meula, residents beaten and killed for refusing relocation, 2005. Ajar, Meula Human Rights Report, 2005. Human Rights Watch, Aceh, Human rights abuses continue post-tsunami, 2006, YouTube video archive. Meula 2005, post-tsunami violence. Justice notes, we are survivors insisting that all the names of victims and families have tried to testify, but the world still turns a blind eye. There is no reason to delay justice for the people of Aceh. Every child killed and every woman raped has a name and a story. There is nothing to hide and nothing to forget. This tragedy should be remembered as a witness to the atrocities that continue to go unpunished. We add that efforts to complete the list of victims are ongoing, both by survivors and the Acehnese people themselves. Each name represents a life and a true story demanding justice, not just a number in a report. The world is reminded not to allow this suffering to be forgotten or hidden by anyone. We can confirm that until now there has been no justice for the people of Aceh who became victims. Hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost due to war, violence, and disaster, but the world remains silent. Aceh will not be silent until every victim, children, and women get recognition and true justice. The people's lands are still under control. The TNI, Bean, SGI are still roaming in every lane and street in Aceh. Is this peace? The voice of the people is the court with the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, reaffirm our faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small. Preamble to the Charter of the United Nations, 1945, to develop friendly relations between nations based on respect for the principles of equal rights and self-determination of nations, and to take other appropriate steps to strengthen peace in the world. Pasal 1 Ayat 2, Piagam PBB. Based on these principles, if a country fails to prevent and prosecute perpetrators of crimes against humanity, then the voice of the people will be the highest court. Because it is the people who bear the suffering, it is the people who witness bloodshed on their own land, and it is the people who have the right to demand true justice. There is no power or institution of any kind that can erase the truth born from the screams of the oppressed. Therefore, when international justice fails and the perpetrator state continues to protect war criminals, the people have a moral right to uphold the truth through their voices, prayers, and testimony. The responsibility to protect R2P principle affirms that when a state fails to protect its people from genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, the responsibility shifts to the international community and the voices of the world's people. This is the court of conscience where truth stands even when power tries to suppress it. If a country fails to prevent and prosecute perpetrators of crimes against humanity, then the voice of the people becomes the highest court. Because it is the people who bear the suffering, it is the people who witness bloodshed in their own land, and it is the people who have the right to demand true justice. There is no power or institution of any kind that can extinguish the truth born from the cries of the oppressed. Apology and deep sorrow to all the families of the victims, to the fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, and sisters who were left behind. We express our deepest apologies. Because of the limitations of our abilities, no words can erase our wounds, no efforts can replace the suffering of Aceh due to the Indonesian invaders. We are in a lonely exile. We can only write while crying, pray in prayer, and promise to continue to voice this truth, so that the world will no longer turn away. Although sometimes life and freedom are at stake, may every name that has been mentioned and not mentioned here, and every soul that has gone be a light in the presence of God. May the tears of mothers who have lost their children, and the prayers of children who have lost their parents, be a witness before God that they did not die in vain. We stand with you in grief, in love, and in determination that let justice be buried by tea.